Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Phillip and I'm going to explain you a little bit about the current NU metagame. I'm going to try and go into a deeper discussion about certain Pokemon and how they work, as well as mostly just some major aspects of the metagame as it is right now. I will also do a slight overview in regards of what can you do against this, what can you take advantage of, what can you try to utilize to stay ahead of the metagame, etc. And I'm also going to try and explain a couple of Pokemon that are most certainly going to be the most impactful Pokemon. In fact, I can actually just show you a straight up replay of just a standard team right now and where it simply would have lost, because when I just look at some replays, like for example Blunder's video, I see his teams are definitely not bad, it's great, but some Pokemon just, there are so many threats right now, no team can prepare against everything. And some Pokemon, just for example that, and being with the usage stats of just the Smogon NU of NUPL, I mean, so many of these things are just setup bait for some of these Pokemon, and other Pokemon are forced out with just the slightest bit of chip damage. It's threatening. Literally, Pokemon such as, I'm just gonna give you a random one, Braviary takes advantage of all these Pokemon, takes advantage of Cofagrigus, takes advantage of so many of these Pokemon. And then you have answers such as Rhydon, who are capable of offensively pressuring these Pokemon from ever being able to set up thanks to Rock Blast. Well, a bit iffy on that, but just being able to pressure those Pokemon, and those are lesser used, just it's kind of sad, to be honest, to see the metagame mostly oriented in one kind of way when we have so many viable threats right now just running around who can actually just ruin most of the things that are so-called a balanced formation of the tier, because there's much more to discover about this tier, and it's unfortunate to see because a lot of people complain about this metagame right now being so stale and repetitive, when in reality there is a major formation of just teams right now, just Steelix plus a bulky water type plus the dark type Pursuit Trapper plus a wall breaker plus another wall breaker and plus a hazard remover or an additional pivot depending on your team. That's traditional balance, as it would be balanced in my opinion. That's a bit unfortunate. There's not much to say about that. It's quite literally unfortunate. Steelix has gotten massive amounts of usage, and it's deserved. It's a good Pokemon, but it's not deserved to be this heavily overused. But I'm not going to be one of those people that complains about that. Instead, contrary, I'm going to go into details about some other Pokemon. I'm going to explain you on why a lot of good Pokemon, especially in the current metagame, are as good as they are. So, without more complaints, I'm going to talk about Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus has the capacity to set up a trick room, set up a nasty plot, and just kill something against a majority of teams. It doesn't need to have support such as Parting Shot, doesn't need to have memento support. It just straight up has the opportunity. It has a lot of Pokemon that can do that on, and not many things actually just straight up answer it. We have Pokemon like Meloetta, we have Pokemon like Braviary, who are going to be able to counter it, but besides that, Pokemon like Sneasel, Pokemon like Houndoom, Pokemon like Drapion, those literally just faint after a +2 never-ending nightmare. And that's not even taking into account the fact that it can just use Hidden Power Fight, for example, against Sneasel to just one KO it. It can use Hidden Power Fight against Houndoom, which after I think after Stealth Rock damage, it's actually going to be able to one-hit KO at a +2. Just gonna name a couple just out of my head. So it's gonna be able to just set up on a lot of teams very effectively without much precaution, really. It fits well on offense, it fits well on balance, fits well on, well, what we call balance. It's literally just having 2 pivots plus just defensive walls, and potentially just hazard removals as well. Hazard stack offense, Trick Room, obviously, and then we're already going to the more specific playstyles like Auroraville offense. There's so much you can place this thing on, and there's almost no drawback. It punishes webs, it punishes Trick Room, it punishes opposing weather playstyles. It's going to be able to actually pressure a lot of stuff without much to be afraid of, really. and that's an amazing Pokemon just to stand out for. I think it might be suspected, not that long. I do think it would be after NU Open. I don't think in the middle of NU Open. That would be unwise, in my opinion. But I don't know. That's my opinion on it. Then we also have Sneasel, obviously. Sneasel, less spammable. It's less splashable. Excuse me. It's more spammable. It literally just spams its knockoff and Icicle Crush coverage, even against its counters, and it's going to be withering them down on the turn of a switch in. Obviously, Sneasel is going to be limited in the fact that it can just switch in onto things, and it would need to be abusing that momentum and drain it away. Sneasel is just going to break teams the moment the Sneasel's answers are going to be worn down. Against offense without answers such as Steelix or answers such as Cobbleberry Slow. Why do I even say that? Cobbleberry Slowbro can actually just stay in on a knockoff and just counter it with a Waterium Z. What am I saying? Counter it with a Scald. It's gonna do a good amount of damage. It's gonna do it KO'd reliably and potentially even burn it with a Cobbleberry. With Waterium Z, you're barely going to be taking any damage. You're just gonna regenerating that back, though just barely not, if I am not mistaken. Because it takes like 42-ish% from a banded knockoff with Waterium Z on. That's actually like a good amount of damage, but it's Slowbro for a reason. Slowbro being in the tier, a lot of people think, oh, that's broken. Why? It was OU last gen, it must be broken. No, it's not broken. It's actually quite balanced Pokemon. We have a lot of grass type Pokemon that are very dominant, even without Slowpoke. What do you have for this thing? 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 Just gonna name a couple of them. But Sneasel has the great advantage in that it's gonna be able to beat its counters. That's one of the main things. And on top of that, it has the utility of a strong Ice Shard, a stab priority move that's gonna be easily revenge killing a lot of common threats such as Vivillon, Lilligant. Those are not common, but they're threats. It's gonna be finishing off stuff quite easily. And the other one is Pursuit, so it's going to be trapping opponents. Now, what could help Sneasel out the most? Heatherstack. It's literally the best Pokemon to place on Heatherstack without a single question if you were to ask me. It can trap Pokemon who otherwise would be taking too much damage if they actually try to switch out. It potentially even puts them in range for Heathers to finish them off. It takes advantage for getting its answers worn down much faster. Just having Stealth Rocks on one spike up literally makes Steelix get worn really quickly. Just a round of knockoff after 2 layers of spikes, and then an Icicle Crash. At that point, I think it's going to be put in range for the next Icicle Crash the next time it comes in. So that's just 2 times it then came in to counter it, and then it's already completely done. Just to give you an example. But yeah, that's Bandit Sneasel for you. It's a tough Pokemon to deal with. Obviously, it's also pressured by offensive Pokemon such as Scarf users, priority users such as Bullet Punch from Machamp, Hitmonlee's Mach Punch, those kind of things. Those are going to be pressuring it. Even just resisted priority or neutral priority, it's going to do good amount of damage, because Sneasel does not have good defenses. It's a very frail mon. Next up, we have Pokemon such as the Grass type Pokemon. Rotom and Sceptile, probably the same thing. I'm just going to go over those quickly. You're just gonna click Choice Specs, Leafstorm. It's gonna drill through teams. It's gonna drill through Pokemon such as Steelix. I'm just going to keep saying Steelix because it's the most relevant thing to just be saying. Who otherwise would be able to answer, say, Rotom, because it's neutral to Grass. It resists Electric, so it must be good against it. No, it's literally the moment its sturdy breaks, it's actually going to be waste. It actually does nothing. Leafstorm, I'm going to show you the calc right now. Rotom, Mo. Are you choice specs? Against standard Steelix, which I think is just the best set right now, just standard Steelix. The moment that sturdy breaks, that's a very good chance to just one-hit KO that thing. Just to give you an example, it's not an answer. It's not an answer. Don't think that it barely does any damage back to it to just say. You just wouldn't bother with that for dealing with it. Some other Pokemon such as more trivial grass type Pokemon such as Vileplume. Vileplume is an amazing Pokemon in this metagame right now. It answers a lot of stuff. The biggest issue I have with it is that our primary wall-breaking fight types, Embor and Machamp, they can just drill through those. It can just drill through that thanks to Facade, and in this case just the Sapphire Flare Blitz with Reckless Boost. It's just gonna die. But there's that. It obviously also counters Virizion, which is a major thing to have. It's a reliable Pokemon against Whimsicott. Now that alone is just something worth going for. Whimsicott can run the Choice Specs Psychic set with Moonblast and Specs Energy Ball. Energy Ball because that actually 2-hit KOs Steelix, which otherwise would be able to be a great Steel Fairy type answer. Whimsicott has the coverage to beat that. With Psychic has the coverage to beat Pokemon such as Vileplume, Garbodor, Quillfish. Why did I even mention Quillfish? Quillfish is gonna die anyway. Garbodor, Golbat, and Vileplume. It's gonna have it for that. It's gonna just drill through that. The best set for Whimsicott obviously is a Pixie Plate set, because the metagame right now, as you can probably have guessed, or probably did not, is that it's heavily focused on offense and preventing the opponent from having setup opportunities. Whimsicott, for more balance-oriented teams, is a great Pokemon to just fit on. It's often even picked over Rotom, even when you want this Grass-type offense. It's just picked over it because it has that Prankster Encore. That's a great utility. On top of that, Whimsicott has the great offense of just being a Fairy-type Pokemon. An offensive Fairy-type Pokemon is an amazing utility, especially in this metagame, because it outspeeds Pokemon like Virizion. It outspeeds Pokemon like Sneasel even. And it's going to be able to KO it even without investment, just holding a Pixie Plate. You can actually just go max HP and just use it like as a pivot. I've done that before. I don't think that's actually the worst option. I wouldn't recommend it, however. You would want to go max special attack. Because Giga Drain actually gives you enough recovery on the Pokemon where you can actually go for Giga Drain. Against, for example, a Slowking, when it switches in, you can Giga Drain on it and just use it out, because a lot of people just run around with Slowking as being a primary answer. Obviously, you need to get around Steelix first, because Steelix is going to be answering Whimsicott in the first place, who you can, again, Giga Drain on, so I should have rather named that one. Then we have Virizion. Virizion doesn't have answers. It's as simple as that. I said Vileplume. The Psychium Z set would ruin it. The Rockium Z set would do major damage against it. I'm just going to try and show you that calc. Sorry for that replay. That replay was a replay of Assassin Rogue against me. He instantly left. He DC'd. It's disconnected. Which is unfortunate. But I'm going to give you that example purely because it just shows how well one Pokemon can literally ruin a pretty standard looking team. So I'm going to go for the Z move, and I'm going to go for +2. That's a good amount of damage. I'm going to tell you that. After some good hazards being stacked, that's a scary amount of damage. Obviously you won't have like 3 layers of spikes and stealth rocks up, but this is just a random calc. Like, if Vileplume is worn and pressured from ever being able to go for Moonlight or Synthesis, this is gonna do major damage. This can finish it off, and this is not even the proper coverage for it. The proper coverage for it is Zen Headbutt. Zen Headbutt. That one hit KO is clean. There's nothing to say about it. It literally is just as good as it sounds. And this just does even more damage than the rock attack. So this is major for dealing with Vileplume. Though it's in generally not that much advantage. It's not that advantaging because, again, it's I mean, you got Garbodor, who you would be hitting with that. You got Vileplume, who you would be hitting that with that. But you can also use Continental Crush against Golbat. You actually would prefer that, because I think that in the calc actually matters a bit. Golbat's defensive Golbat, yeah, at +2 has a chance to knock it out. So if it's at full HP, it would be potentially able to lift those. That's quite irrelevant to say. It's just the idea that it's more reliable in that regard. Though at the same time, I would be saying the opposite. You would be going with Stone Edges if you were to waste your Z move with the other one, which is even more inaccurate. But things aside, I actually am a big fan of Continental Crush. I've been swearing that it's just better to use than Zen Headbutt. in general. Simple as that. As I think Viridian is the subject of discussion right now. I'm not sure. Yeah. But as I was saying, there are a good amount of Pokemon right now that are going to be forcing a lot towards the offensive side and trying to force out walls, break walls. And this is why I think it's bad for people to focus this much on trying to use balance. Balance punishes offense, I understand that, and offense right now is just... It's everything, really. It's as honest as that. We have a couple of Pokemon such as Houndoom who can be amazing wall breakers. We have Pokemon like Jellicent who can even be preferred over Slowbro sometimes. However, think Slowbro should be A+ for obvious reason that it's just one of the most reliable walls. I do not, however, agree with the stupid saying that it's going to be an answer to a Pokemon like Machamp. Because here's the thing, Machamp is a 2-hit KO after Stealth Rocks with Facade. So I don't see where that statement comes in, because that's not a counter in my opinion. Even if you're going to be able to regenerate it up, you're going to be taking too much damage to reliably answer it. You're going to be forcing it out after after like double predictions, because Machamp can actually go for very punishing plays with close combat and knockoff after a flame or boost. Obviously you need to get it in first, which is where pivots come in. But Machamp is Machamp. Everything's set with that. Slowking, not that big of a threat, I'm not going to go into discussion about it, but we have a lot of setup threats, and I should be mentioning that a bit more. Setup threats such as Barbaracle, Lilligant, Vivillon, those are going to be able to set up on the majority of the metagame, and are going to be able to punish the majority of the metagame, because they just beat. There's really not much you can stop it from doing. And here's the thing how the Z moves work. If I have Encore Whimsicott, and I Encore at the turn it actually goes for a Shell Smash, it can still go for a Continental Crush, and that would finish off a Whimsicott. It would be locked into Shell Smash, but there is your Whimsicott. For example, some Fire-type Pokemon are going to have a much easier time. Some Pokemon such as Sneasel are going to have an easier time, because this thing cannot revenge, however, anymore. Just the fact that Whimsicott is going to be wasted is just a great thing, even if it costs your Z-move. That's just to show you what kind of threats the Z-moves actually have gotten in terms of mechanics, because even I've already named you how it breaks walls. I have already named you how it's gonna be able to even get past disruptive Pokemon. It's dumb. It's legitimately dumb. You also can lock trade, obviously. That aside, trade lock it. So trick or switcheroo with the choice item. What else was I going to say? I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of multiple things at once, because I want to still name the Auroraville offense. I still want to name you the presence of Hazard Stack in general, because you need to have a plan against that. And I'm also going to go into a little bit more detail about some specific Pokemon that are going to be the most relevant right now. If you haven't paused the video and actually tried to look at the thing, but I'm going to go into that later, believe me. Oh yeah, I was going to say, offensive setup Pokemon, they got a massive buff. Just by having Z-move mechanics exist right now, they got a massive buff. Walls in general have been dropping in general. They just aren't as good as they were in previous generations. You're not going to be able to just pivot on in and out. And this is the major difference here. Pivoting has become a bit harder to do. So I'm constantly just with the thought of, why would you try to still utilize it in such kind of way, because you won't make that work as effectively. I have been proven wrong on that, however. I've already seen some matches in NUPL where you straight up just have people pivoting around constantly, and they're gaining massive advantage because they're completely outplaying the opponent. But I can show you the same thing if they were to play it offensively. They would still be outplaying your opponent. The problem just is they weren't in the offensive position right then. That's the difference. But as for specific team styles, we have Hazard Stack offense. We have Pokemon like Garbodor, Quillfish. We have offensive teams such as Omanyte, just Omanyte with spikes I should be showing. Spikes, Stealth Rocks. This is a very standard offensive team with exception of Primeape. This should actually be a regular fight-type Pokemon such as Machamp, or not Machamp, a Scarf fight-type Pokemon such as Emboar. You can also go with Life Orb Emboar and change it into Scarf Meloetta, because you kind of want to have that amazing speed there. Metal Weather is an amazing Pokemon right now. You with Subcalm Mind, you set up a substitute, you Focus Blast the Incineroar, Steelix, or whatever is trying to counter you, and you're just gonna be going for some Calm Minds. You don't care. You just don't care. It's dumb. It's dumb in the way it works. Obviously, this set is completely walled by Spiritomb, so there's that. In general, Metal Weather is going to be quite well walled with Spiritomb. Spiritomb is a bit of an underdog Pokemon. It doesn't do too much damage. It only has 92 attack. It doesn't have straightforward stabs such as something like Crunch. It needs to predict the opponent with a Sucker Punch, and that's nerfed in damage. The only direct damage we move, as you can see, are Pursuit and Shadow Sneak, who are piss poor weak attacks. The best thing Spiritomb can do against, for example, Steelix is just Will-O-Wisp it. Though I will be very honest, every time a Spiritomb has Will-O-Wisp to Steelix, that person has won the match. Every single time. Because Steelix at that point becomes major setup bait, because it's going to be incapable of going for heavy slams. It's going to be pressured, just the way teams are right now. If it is Will-O-Wisp, the way the teams are composed right now with the standard cookie cutter system, those teams are just at a major disadvantage, because that means Steelix is going to be the one that is going to be switching into a Will-O-Wisp. The moment that actually happens, and the moment that has been proven, that kind of locks out just the thinking of how that other team would be looking. Obviously, in a match situation, you would be going in from a different approach, but this is just theoretically speaking. In the moment Steelix would be taking that, there is something already bad going on. In a position that it shouldn't be, because it never should be. As I was saying with Heather Tech, you have a Heather Setter, you have a potential Braviary, potential Ghost type Pokemon such as Kofikiris, Spiritomb, Miss Magius. Those Pokemon do a phenomenal job. Braviary is an amazing Pokemon, and that just comes in and Golbat. It's just going to be punishing those Pokemon quite effectively. It can set up on just so many things. I'm just going to show you that replay right now. I'm just not even going to start the video, the replay, excuse me, because just look at this team preview. This is a pretty standard looking team. If it's special Toxicroak, it would actually be a major advantage against my team, because literally Quillfish cannot do anything if it's not Explosion Quillfish. Braviary cannot beat it if it's special Toxicroak. Well, it can make progress, I should be saying. Spiritomb can only burn it. It's not gonna do piss damage, except for like Shadow Sneak, which is gonna do piss anyway. Hitmonlee doesn't like beating it. Steelix is going to die to that Sting's Focus Blast, and Sceptile doesn't like being faced against a Toxicroak. So my entire team is quite weak against special Toxicroak, I will admit that. But this entire team literally just loses the moment my Braviary gets up a substitute. I literally make massive progress. He needs to sack something, because it sets up on Seismitoad if it's not offensive Seismitoad. It sets up on a Sceptile, because it's actually a counter to Sceptile, which is a major thing. It's going to be able to even answer Rotom if it went for Shadow Ball. It's actually going to taking major advantage of that. It can set up a substitute. It can set up a Calm Mind. Excuse me. It can set up a Bulk Up against his Exatu. It can literally do major freaking damage, and this is a pretty standard looking team. Obviously you would be seeing a bit more defensively oriented, this much more balance oriented. In Incineroar you might actually end up seeing quite a good bit. I don't actually know what the very usage stats of that thing is. I think 2 or 3 in Incineroar. Incineroar 4. 4 people use Incineroar. It's not actually that bad. It's a really great Pokemon for especially balance-oriented teams, because it just fills in the role of... there it is. It fills in the role for a standard Fire, Water, Grass core, alongside the fact that it has going to be able to answer Sneasel, Houndoom, those kind of things, which are actually quite hard to just have answers to. But it still has that Fire typing. It's going to be worn by Stealth Rock, so having that Exatu in here is actually quite really nicely done. Really nicely given. But those things aside, there's also one more playstyle, and this is probably the one I should have mentioned much earlier. Aurora Veil offense. Now, I'm not sure on the approach for this. In my honest opinion, I think it's a dumb thing and it should be banned. Some other people disagree with that, and they actually think it's a balanced playstyle. Fair enough. I'm not going to complain about such opinions because there's a really good amount of things which you can argue about it. The win rate of this thing obviously isn't maximal. People have been using it. I think Sharip versus Hajat, excuse me. Not exactly sure who of the two actually used Aurora Veil offense, but the one using it actually lost the match, because the moment his Auroras went down, the Sandslash, his Aurora Veil went up. That was the only Aurora Veil that was going to be gone off that entire match. That's actually kinda negative if you're looking at the current position of the teams, because they're balance oriented. This kind of offense team actually kinda suffers from that. Now, heavily offensively oriented balance, which is going to force especially preventing setup, will be blocked completely. Pivots and just durable walls, those can just roll through this. Offense, as well as balance that orients especially on the offensive presence, those are going to be blocked with this thing. And that's a major advantage of Aurora Veil right there. Obviously, you have the other playstyle, which is more common right now, so I wouldn't recommend you using this, but I will be saying you will be seeing this. You most certainly will. It's actually quite good, like, team formation. This is actually a pretty standard one. This is made by Meep, Meep Victory. I'm not sure if it was Choice Band or Choice Scarf Drapion. I think he changed it up at one point, if I'm not mistaken. Or that was the Kovagrukas guy, I don't know. But this is a pretty standard team. You have like 2 Zemu viewers in here, potentially even Dragonium, Zetrotonator instead of White Herb. Instead of White Herb, and a Lumberry Verision, which is also a great option. I actually think Lumberry is overall a bit more recommendable. Kovagyrus. Why level 99? Because it outspeeds opposing Kovagyrus in Trick Room. So it's going to be a great counter to Trick Room Pokemon with just having this level drop, and there's not much you would defensively actually need from this Pokemon for it to gain much, I would be saying. So overall you don't really lose much by going that lower level. That's all there is to say, really. Why is Aurora Veil relevant? I should have said that earlier. Aurora Veil is relevant in that it's quick, it's offensive, and it's gonna give you every opportunity that screens lack. Screens you would need to be using with something like Uxie. Uxie with Light Clay just reflects light screen. Originally at the beginning of the gen I was just thinking, oh, just another screen, but then it works like in Hail, so we'll be seeing some like triple screens in Hail or whatever. That was what my first opinion on that was, because I just didn't think of how quick this was compared to it, because screens just take long. So I was thinking like, okay, it would be taking 3 turns, you would be having major advantage, sure, if they go up, if it takes way too long to even get that going. But this is just, you have Aurora's an amazing offensive lead right now, because it breaks opposing sashes, it breaks opposing 30, and it's going to be able to just one-hit kill the majority of the offensive leads. There's that. It's going to be having the best counter lead advantage and going to be able to put up rocks itself. That's amazing right there. The other advantage is it's going to die quickly. In one way that's bad, and the other way is good. It's good in that you're gonna be dying, so your heal will still be up by the time Sandslash comes in. Sandslash just puts up Aurora Veil. Hopefully it even dies that turn. Hopefully, again. And you just go into a Kovagyrus and you have 8 turns of Aurora Veil. You even have Hail in the back for 1 more turn or 2 more turns to abuse against opposing sashes. That's just not against opposing sashes, against just chipping more damage, I should be saying, sorry. But that's just amazing. That just gives you major advantage against so many things. 8 turns of like double screens. For setup Pokemon, that's heaven. So you just have 3 setup Pokemon here, with Kovagyrus and Drapion being the standards. thing to place on this. Virizion is also getting even more and more standard. It's surprising, but it just fills up every single weakness the team remains, and Tornado just fills up most other things, and it's just amazing right now. So it's just, this is a pretty standard team, okay? But with Configuragus, you just set up a trick room, you set up a nasty plot, and you just offense until this thing dies, and you just go into your next threat because you still have 2 turns of reveal up after this thing has wreaked havoc. And this is one of the slowest Pokemon to get started in that regard. Just that's major. It's major. I'm not gonna even say anything else about it because that's just how it is. It's so advantaging. Obviously there are counter strategies. You have defog, you have Pokemon that are going to be able to prevent you from just straight up setting up. Pokemon like Piloswine, for example, are just going to be counter leading that and just going to go for an Earthquake. It's just going to go for some good damaging moves. And on top of that, it's going to be able to pressure out. Just in this formation alone, it's going to be pressuring out most of those Pokemon, with the exception of Gyrus, who, if you would be running something like Meloetta, Gyrus is not going to make any progress. If it's defensive Meloetta, it can even pressure out just Scarf Drapion, because it doesn't actually care too much if it's up Calm Mind Meloetta. Offensive Meloetta is also quite progress making. But all those things aside, I think there's only one more thing that I really wanted to show you, and that is talking about additional playstyles. I mean, you can also go for a bit of an interesting approach with where is it? Obviously these are very standard teams, like just a very standard formation of teams, and a lot of things I can see why people say they get still. But then you have things along these lines: webs, web punishers, and just abusers, like vanilla ice cream. This thing is a great Pokemon, by the way. It's surprising. I saw it as a joke in every single moment ever. And this generation, thanks to having like Snow Warning, it just gets access to Blizzard, so it has a 110 special attack Blizzard. It has 97 speed. That's actually quite good speed here to punish slower Pokemon. Obviously, it needs a Choice Scarf. It actually wants to keep up with the big boys. With Pokemon like Virizion, I'm just saying. But with the Choice Scarf or the Choice Specs or Never Melting Ice, those are the main items it could be running. It can go for an explosion against Pokemon that would otherwise be able to answer it, alongside something else that's going to be spamming the similar kind of things. I'm just going to give you an example. You can explode on a Harujama after like one round of one Blizzard, because you know it's going to be a problem otherwise, or Pokemon like Incineroar. Incineroar is going to be more relevant, I should be saying that. Pokemon like Emboar also, if you're trying to switch in. Emboar is a great Pokemon in that it has the defensive and offensive utility, because it's typing, it's not going to take too much from Stealth Rock. It's going to be able to answer Pokemon like Sneasel even, and with a Choice Scarf it's just going to be a major offensive threat. With a Life Orb set, it can even just, with Sucker Punch, it's going to even do damage, because it's 123 attack, which is just beautiful. But yeah, there's really not much I could be saying otherwise, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I will be seeing a lot of enjoyable teams, because I actually did not join NU Open. I'm not a tournaments player. I'm not one of those people that plays the tournaments. I'm one of those people that will watch the tournaments. Oh yeah, I actually wanted to say this. It doesn't take much to learn this metagame. This is why I made this video in the first place. This was a team that literally just a random person sent me, and I only had to improve like 1 or 2 things. I had to literally just replace one Pokemon, make it Size Shock on Meloetta. I had to replace, I don't even remember which Pokemon it was. I remember now. The only thing I had to replace was changing the Choice Scarf on the Melo, Choice Scarf from the Rotom into Choice Scarf on Rotom into Choice Specs, and changing Meloetta is Choice Specs into Choice Scarf, because that actually gives you advantage against Pokemon such as Vivillon and Pokemon such as Lilligant, because you can hit those with a Side Shock even past their Quiver Dance, and so it's going to be able to answer that alongside having just very strong coverage. In general, it just benefits more, because with the Choice Scarf you're going to be able to pivot more effectively. This is a really, really standard team. This is actually the most standard team I could possibly think of, and this is actually one of the most common teams as well, because it has a Machamp, it has a Steelix, it has a bulky water type Pokemon, it has 2 pivots, and it has a Golbat. not much to say about this. This is like the most standard team you would have, and I actually would be saying use something like this. Obviously you would be running more speed. This was a team requested by that guy, so I didn't actually bother to improve too much on about the speed, because he wanted to use it as a primary fighting type answer, because Jellicent is not meant to do that. So there's that. So yeah, not much to say about that. This is a team randomly made by a person that never played this metagame, and just look at some teams. This is almost flawless in my opinion. There were minor changes to just fix up some weaknesses. If someone just can do that, you can do too. And that's why I want to make this video, just to tell you a bit more about the metagames, and hopefully teach you a bit more about the games in general. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a good bit from it.